Do you want to pull it to shut, Anne? Thank you. So we have video. Yes, good. So it's recorded in some form. I apologise, I forgot to bring the sound recorder, so we'll only get the video, but I guess that's okay. So we'll just start with a few minutes silent meditation. So with the mind a little bit calmer and more focused, let's spend a few moments developing the visualization of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. You should visualize him in the position where the Buddha statue is on the shrine. But with a vivid sense that he's actually there as a real living being with all of the supreme qualities of a fully enlightened Buddha. Although from our perspective of ordinary consciousness, we differentiate many different Buddhas according to their outer form and appearance and their outward characteristics. In reality, there is but one Buddha mind, Dharmakaya mind. So your own living spiritual teacher and the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, are actually the same being, appearing in two different guises, two different forms, according to the need of the time. So one and the same time, this being that you're visualizing in front of you, this position of the Buddha statue on the shrine, is the real Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, the fully enlightened one, who appeared in India 2,500 years ago. It is also your own root guru. They are the same being. So here, the outer form, the appearance, the physical form is that of Shakyamuni Buddha, but the essence, the root mind, is the mind of your own root guru, who in fact is none other than the Buddha himself. Strongly feel not only there's no difference, no differentiation between these two, but also feel Guru Shakyamuni Buddha is actually present here in front of you. So as we recite the Heart Sutra, strongly feel, I am receiving this teaching, this profound teaching on the ultimate nature of reality, shunyata, the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. I am receiving this teaching now from the Buddha himself as my personal teacher. Spoken through the mouths of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and the Arhat Shariputra, but actually emanating from the mind of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha through the power of his meditation. Page 9. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, Any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it can be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So just take a moment to refresh that visualization, a strong sense of the actual presence of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front of you, in a body of light, radiant golden colour, wearing the 3 robes of a fully ordained monk and seated in the Vajra position, the lotus position of meditation, with the left hand cupped at the navel, holding a golden begging bowl, right hand touching the ground in front of the right knee, seated on a lotus sun and moon seat, on a jeweled throne, supported by 8 white lions. Surrounded by all the holy beings. They dissolve into the Buddha. The throne dissolves into the lotus, dissolves into the sun cushion, into the moon cushion, into the Buddha. And Buddha comes towards you, becoming smaller, turning round, and comes to rest on the crown of your head. Feel that you're receiving blessings and inspiration from your Guru, who is Shakyamuni Buddha. Planting the seeds for you to be able to travel the whole path to enlightenment, blessing your mind, open the doors of your awareness to the truths of Dharma. Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's holy body dissolves into golden light, which flows down your central channel into your heart. Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's holy mind merges with your mind. All your negative karmas, delusions, suffering, and hindrances and ignorance are dissolved. Your mind becomes one with the Dharmakaya, holy mind of your Guru. Resting in great bliss, supreme peace, absorbed in contemplation of emptiness, the mere absence of inherent existence, of the self, the I, and all phenomena. So just that sense of no fixed identity, no independent existence, the space-like mere absence of this concrete, fixed type of existence that we habitually believe. The more that our mind is totally absorbed in this space of emptiness, the more intense is the blissful feeling of peace and freedom. Seeing the interdependence of all phenomena, and the fact that the illusion of separate, independent existence that drives all of our craving and dissatisfaction is completely unreal. The mind can dwell in serene joy and peace. We'll just take a few minutes in silence to connect with that truth in our own way, in accordance with our own understanding, to the best of our ability. So, we only develop this understanding, this awareness progressively. So whatever level of understanding or experience you have is fine. The point is to spend time with that awareness, and it will grow and deepen. gently relax your concentration. Slowly bring the meditation to an end. So last week we looked at engaging bodhicitta, setting out on this journey of the Bodhisattva. I think, I talked about the aspiring, the wishing bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta. It's one distinction. There's another distinction that's quite helpful, which is between artificial or fabricated bodhicitta, it's sometimes called, and spontaneous bodhicitta. And this is again helpful because it helps to break down the sense of it something too far away. So a bodhisattva is someone who has spontaneous bodhicitta. And sometimes when bodhicitta is referred to, it's referring to this spontaneous bodhicitta, which is a very high realization. Very high realization. So someone who has reached that stage, there was never a moment when their whole sort of mind, their intention, their actions are not dedicated to working for others. That's what a bodhisattva is. In every moment, their whole sort of energy is directed towards others, to bringing others to, freeing others from suffering, bringing them to enlightenment. So if we compare that with our experience at this time, obviously we're not there. We're not even nearly there. I mean, speaking for myself. Some of you may be bodhisattvas in disguise, I don't know. But it is, what I'm saying is, it is way beyond the ordinary consciousness. It is a very exceptional thing to someone to be an actual bodhisattva. I mean, my experience of somebody like Lama Zopa is, I think, that's an example. Or His Holiness here is very clear. So if we think, that's bodhicitta and I'm down here, that's not so helpful. So, but when we, we meditate on bodhicitta, or when we do any kind of, beneficial action, whether it be a spiritual practice or something that kind of has the name of a spiritual practice, or just, being kind to somebody or giving, something, material things, if we have in our mind, this thought, I'm doing this, with the wish, the motivation to benefit others, then we are practicing bodhicitta on this level. Like the fabricated bodhicitta is, we use our conceptual mind, we use our thinking to remind ourselves, this is my path. So a lot of the time for me, I'm not thinking about it, and I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about bodhicitta. I'm not thinking about becoming enlightened for the sake of sentient being. But that doesn't mean that the actions that I do with that thought, with that wish, are not actual bodhicitta. They are fabricated. This what we call artificial bodhicitta, coming from a conceptual thought. So we are, at the moment, it's not spontaneous, it goes on and off, right? But it is real. It isn't we shouldn't think this isn't bodhicitta. It is. And even sometimes people could say, well, you can say that you're a bodhisattva if you have this, because it kind of encourages us that we're not that we, because one thing people sometimes say, well, actually, technically, you're not on the Mahayana path. You haven't entered the Mahayana path until you have this spontaneous bodhicitta, and this is the path of accumulation, the first of the 5 Mahayana paths. So I think that's kind of, it kind of doesn't give us enough encouragement. It's all too far away. I'm not in it. So I feel it's helpful to bear this in mind. We shouldn't think that our practice at the moment is not real bodhicitta. It is, but it is fabricated. For most of us, it is that. So this was by way of sort of a preface to the check-in session, just because we talked about it, and I think my purpose partly in the talk last week was to get us thinking about this. What does it mean for me to think about, I'm saying the words, may I become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings, to kind of make that real. It's like I can say the words, but how often do I really have that experience? This is what I want to do. This is my kind of genuine desire. It's not just I'm sort of hoping that something's going to happen one day, but I really mean it. So I was kind of trying to stimulate that sort of thought, and wondering if, thinking about and discussing that topic, if you like, had brought anything up either during your meditation practice or during the day, or that you thought about it. And what has anybody got any thoughts or any interesting experiences of it, or questions about it? How has it been, having that as the sort of topic of the week to think about? Or maybe even think about something completely different, I don't know.
I think doing all this does make you more aware.
Mm-hmm.
You are trying to automatically, isn't it, to try and help other people and that. And it doing all this practice and everything does bring it to the front and make you more aware of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. And so it changes your actions a little bit, and little by little, that kind of gathers strength. It's like a small snowball, isn't it? You're rolling it, and it slowly gets bigger and becomes more meaningful. Yeah. Very good.
Found a dead bird. So found a dead bird.
Okay. Yeah. And
my immediate thought was obviously that it was really sad for the bird that it was dead.
yeah.
So I picked it up and said the wishing prayer for rebirth in Dewachen.
Okay.
Tucked it
Yeah.
under the hedge.
Ah.
And then I sort of felt that it was really, in a way that was good, because then there was that link between me and the bird.
Yes.
So that in the future,
Very important.
that bodhicitta motivation has a
You create a karmic link. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, very good. I remember Venerable Rabina Kortin talking about this and saying that, the Bodhisattva, what they do, what they want to do, they want to get eye contact with you, so that then they create a karmic link. And there's one practitioner who was, for some reason, there's this one woman in this village where he could never kind of get eye contact with her. So what he did, he went in and ripped up her garden. She came out and he got eye contact in it, because then he knows that at some future point he's going to be able to, that's a bit extreme. No, he's not advocating that, but that was a point. Yeah, no, so it's important, and all the time we're creating these karmic connections with people. So if we keep that in mind, that even very little thing that we do now, in future, karmically manifests as something much more powerful. So a positive action. That's a good thought. That's a useful thought. Mm. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else?
I think it makes you happier, doesn't it?
That's true.
Just
Yeah.
content with that.
Very true, Charlotte. That is good. Yeah, it's good advertisement for bodhicitta. It makes you happier. Yeah. Yeah. Lama Atisha said, something about that. I travel the path from joy to joy. That's the Mahayana path, from joy to joy, a joyful path. Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually quite useful, because that motivates us. Very good to when we see it clearly, it really helps actually. Oh, this is what makes me happy. Why not do it more? Change our habit and do what makes us happy. Being kind to others, thinking about others, creates happiness for them and for us. Very good. Okay. So I feel it's so important, to think in this kind of way, to make it very real, and we've got something that we can bite on, that we can rather than thinking too much about these exalted states of high realization. We do need to think about those, because those are the kind of destination, right up above the snow line of the mountain. That's up there, and that's where we're going. But something that we can really sort of feel is engaging with our actual daily experience, that we're on this journey. Yeah, well, maybe we're walking up the lower slopes, sort of the wooded slopes towards the mountain at the moment, rather than it's over there, far away, and it's always, no, we are on that journey. Yeah. So I wanted to say that because, I talked about the wishing bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta, and I think that's helpful too, but not to think that we can't do engaging. We are, that when we're actually doing those kind of positive actions, that is engaging bodhicitta, real bodhicitta. So if we take the bodhisattva vow, then we can feel, that even though there might be small actions like, and that's not it's not changing the whole world, picking up a bird and saying a few mantras, but that is the bodhisattva. Those are what the bodhisattva does. So we do that on a small scale, and slowly it grows into something very, very meaningful. So last week we talked more about the method side. And I said that out of these 6 perfections, the first 5 are method, and the 6th one, wisdom, is just the one is wisdom. But actually, with concentration, it's a little bit, not so clear. Like, it has a bit of both. Because if we practice wisdom, like, studying the philosophical teachings on emptiness, we can do that, and it's extremely important to do that. But studying them on an intellectual level alone will not liberate us. It will only get us to a certain point, and it will not uproot the delusions completely. It will not destroy the ego. We can't do that just purely by intellectual study. So it is only the combination of concentration and wisdom together that can do that. So the concentration, although technically on one level it's method, but it also comes into the wisdom side as well. And so in the root text, and the root text, the poem by Lama Tsongkhapa, there's a special section on the combination of method and wisdom. So it's like, these are not to be practiced just separately. We need to practice them separately, but then we need to bring them together. And it's the combination of concentration and wisdom that actually has the power to take us out of samsara completely. Nothing else can do that. So even in Tantra, where we got all these high tantric methods, but they are really, I think it's pretty clear in the Dalai Lama's teachings on Tantra that all of these special methods and mandalas and, subtle body meditations and all of this thing that are in Tantra, the one purpose that they have is to generate very, very powerful state of concentration, much more powerful than you can develop on the sutra path, and then apply that concentration, use that concentration to meditate on emptiness. So essentially, there's absolutely no difference. It's just that the power of concentration with Tantra is much greater. So that's actually the only real difference. There are lots of, special techniques within Tantra, but that's the entire purpose, is to generate incredibly powerful concentration so that with that meditation, it burns through the ego grasping much faster, much more powerfully. Okay. So here, there was a little bit in Tantra at the end of the text there, but here we're looking at just this very, very important topic of what's called the union of shamatha and vipassana. The shamatha is calm abiding. I don't know if there's a difference between calm abiding and concentration. Calm abiding is like, well, it's the name of an actual realization of concentration. So when we talk about calm abiding or tranquil abiding, it is a certain level of concentration, but it is also given, the name is also given to the training in that. Okay, so even though you might not have reached actual calm abiding, it is still shamatha practice that you're doing, calm abiding practice. There are these 9 stages of increasing concentration. It's very helpful, actually, I find, because usually when we read about these realizations, they're kind of way beyond us. But I think these 9 stages of concentration, we can say, well, the first one is actually to identify the object of meditation. So if you're meditating on the breathing and you've recognized your breathing, you've reached stage 1. And then if you can stay with that object for a short while, then you've reached stage 2. And then if you can stay with that object most of the time during your meditation session, that's stage 3. Well, that's a little bit more difficult, but it's not, it's not completely out of our sphere to imagine we could get there. And stage 4 is to be able to hold that object all the time throughout your meditation, never to completely forget the object. And that's as far as you can get without going into a meditation retreat, actually, because then beyond that 4th level, then you're going beyond, like, not just completely forgetting the object, but actually, even though you have awareness of your breathing, like, there's other thoughts kind of just creeping in there sometimes, isn't there? So when you get beyond that 4th level, you're beginning to have an experience of having no distraction from the object at all, just for a short time, and then you're going increasingly, like, getting rid of those subtle distractions of excitement or subtle, called subtle mental sinking, where even though the object's appearing clearly to your mind, the sharpness and intensity of that concentration has reduced a bit. So when you get to the 9th level, even that's gone. So throughout the whole meditation session, effortlessly, your concentration is perfect. And then beyond, when you reach that level, you kind of automatically go to the calm abiding shamatha, where you experience this kind of state of bliss called pliancy, where your body feels as light as cotton, and you feel like an extremely powerful state of mind, and you can effortlessly keep your mind on the object without, So that is the shamatha side, And in order to reach that, what you would have to do is you'd have to practice probably quite a lot of purification and accumulation of merit to kind of clear away the obstacles. Because otherwise, if you go into like a 6-month or 12-month shamatha retreat, if you've got karmic obstacles or you haven't got enough karmic positive energy, you won't be able to do it. So this is why, things like the 100,000 prostrations and these practices are recommended, because if you do that with a strong motivation, and it takes maybe, you can do it either in the form of a retreat, like a 3-month retreat. You can do 100,000 prostrations. Oh, they're quite intense, really, to do them in 3 months. Or you can do, you can do the practice once a day, which 100 takes about half an hour. It's quite doable. You can do that for 3 years. It sounds like a lot.
Depends how old you are.
Well, I'm 63 and I'm doing it.
How many years have you been doing it?
About sort of 5 or 6 years I haven't been consistent. I mean, sometimes I've done it like for 6, 9 months at a time. I've not managed to do 3 years, but it's not impossible. It just takes. I think having the sort of stamina and the determination to do it is something that you'd have to train your mind over a period of time, and gradually your ability to do it and your motivation to do it slowly becomes more, and it becomes easier to do. The more you do it, the easier it is to do. Now I don't find it so difficult, as I did. It is progressively you get better at it. You get more, you get fit. It's doing 100 prostrations. It's kind of quite hard work. So but that's okay. I mean, it's not, it really doesn't compare with the people doing marathon training. Lots of people do train to do long distance running and things like that, and they do much more arduous training. It's not out of the question. It's quite a lot of work. Of course it's quite a lot of work. But what I want to get across is it's doable. It's possible. If we're serious about it, we can do this. It's not out of the question. It might be a little bit beyond where we are at the moment, but we can work towards it and we can get there if we want to, if we're serious. You have to be serious. But by doing that kind of practice, you clear away the obstacles and you do maybe short retreats. And after maybe a few years of serious practice, you might get to the point where, okay, I feel ready. And your teacher says, well, I think now you can do this. And it's 6 to 12 months. You're in retreat. Just you have one meditation object and you just meditate on that. And initially, Alan Wallace did this. He did a 12-month shamatha retreat. Quite a few. He's probably done a few now, but it's quite a few years ago that he did that. I think one of his teachers, Gen Lam Rinpa, was there for the first 3 months, helping to guide people through. And he said, they started out, they meditate once an hour for 10 minutes. And then slowly increased to 15 minutes. And by the time we got to 6 months, the one person was meditating for 7 hours and then taking a break and then meditating for another 4 hours. And she said the only reason she took a break was she needed to go to the loo. And so these were ordinary people. I think there was quite a few people that started the retreat, maybe about 50, 60 or 100 people started the retreat. And then some people stayed for a month, some people stayed for 3 months. After 6 months, there was only quite a small number there, about 8 or 10 people who stayed for the full year. And some of those people developed, perfect shamatha meditation. It's possible, it's not impossible, it is possible. Of course, you need a lot of motivation, determination to do it. You need to be you're willing to do the preparation. It takes maybe a few years of serious practice. And then you can have that, that's there. No. Yes, Vajrasattva, meditation, there are other ways of doing it. You have to do the purification and accumulation of merit, and there are different ways of doing it. And of course, different people have different karma. Some people have got, quite pure karma to start. They don't need to do very much purification. Some people have already got lots of merit. But what I'm saying is, it's available for all of us to do that. We can do it. It's not out of the question. Of course, we work at the level we're at the moment. We might not be at that level to sort of, okay, now I'm going to do 100 prostrations a day for 3 years. Maybe that's not realistic right now, but who knows, in 2 or 3 years, you might be in a space where it does feel possible. I just want to make it to take away this kind of sense of unreality about it, that this is only for people who are born in Nepal or Tibet, or it's not for. It doesn't apply to me. because we really are very subject to that, to thinking, I'm just an ordinary person, I couldn't possibly ever do this. And I don't think we should think like that. We should recognise that we can develop our minds. And so this is one side, yes, the shamatha. And Lama Tsongkhapa is very emphatic, this is it. One point of meditation brings a samadhi fantastic beyond description. When you read the teachings on shamatha, the way they describe that state, you go, wow, that's amazing. Can't imagine having that. It would be just extraordinary. It's, the very, very powerful mind, very blissful mind, very pure mind, very peaceful mind. But don't stop there, because that is not the, it's not the real essence of what we're doing here, because it is only a temporary. It is called, actually, temporary cessation. So we're talking about true cessations, the third noble truth, a cessation of suffering. Samadhi is a cessation of suffering. In some state of samadhi, there's no manifest suffering happening at all. There is, of course, technically, there's the pervasive suffering. It's always there until we reach the realization of direct perception of emptiness. But there's no manifest suffering. In a pure state of awareness. But because the seeds of suffering are still there, in a way, if you stop there, you haven't got anywhere, because eventually, you go to your next rebirth and those karmic seeds will ripen, and might be a good rebirth, might not be, but if you haven't got to the root, we've all had single pointed concentration many, many times in the past, in previous lifetimes, and we're still in samsara. Speaking of myself. So that's only, Lama Tsongkhapa says, do not stop there. The power to cut the root of samsara does not lie in single-pointed concentration alone. And this is very much emphasized because I think particularly at the time when the Buddha was alive, and ever since, there are many teachers in the Hindu tradition who teach concentration, samadhi, as the way to liberation. Now, I am not saying that they don't have, many of them, I think, do have like a true path. They emphasize samadhi. But if that is all that they're teaching, if all that they're teaching is single-pointed concentration, that is not enough to liberate you from samsara. But, there's quite a few people, and there have been right back to the time of the Buddha, who have, that's been the teaching that they've received. And it feels like you are completely free from suffering. You are, for that time. There's no manifest suffering happening. And it's likely to lead to a high rebirth, likely to lead to a rebirth in a Deva realm, actually. If there's, if you are practicing that within a framework of moral discipline, if there's no moral discipline, then it can lead you to very negative rebirth, actually, because your mind is much more powerful. So you'll be generating very powerful negative actions if you've not got moral discipline. But if concentration and moral discipline together, it's probably going to be the Deva realms where you're going to be abiding in bliss maybe for aeons, but then you're back down again. So if it's not combined with the wisdom, seeing the true nature of reality, ultimately it's useless. Yes, we'll have a blissful rebirth, but then after that, what happens? So this is kind of the difference between the first and the second scope. Is the lower scope and the middle scope. The lower scope is I don't want to have a suffering rebirth next time. Well, that's a valid motivation. That makes sense. But then what about the time after that? And the time after that? So, we have to transcend that. We have to go beyond that lower scope to at least the middle scope to be, have the determination to become completely free from suffering, forever. Otherwise, the problem just is going to come back again. So to do that, we definitely need this insight. Vipassana, translated something like penetrative insight, penetrating into the true nature of reality. So that is actually more than just, I think it's more than just understanding the theory of emptiness. It's a meditative realization, so that through analytical meditation, repeated analytical meditation, with a correct view of emptiness, we begin to actually get an experience of the non-inherent existence of the self, the fact that the self, I don't exist from my own side. I, me, David, is a mental imputation onto this collection of parts. That's all it is. Like Mala is a mental imputation onto this collection of parts. There's nothing there except some beads and string. The mala only comes into existence because I label it as a mala. Same with me, there's nothing here except, flesh, blood, bones and all the rest of it, and mental experiences, moments of consciousness. That's all there is here, but I label it as David and then it becomes an I. Okay? So intellectually, it's perhaps not too difficult to understand that that's true, but it doesn't become an experience until I meditate on it, until I actually begin to really kind of integrate that understanding into my mind. I'm not sure, I probably should know. The definition of Vipassana actually the difference between just conceptually understanding what emptiness is, and Vipassana, penetrative insight. I should know that. I apologise, that's departed from my consciousness in the time being. I'll look it up and come back next week with the answer to that question if I can. But so we need to do these, work on these two trainings. So this is, as I said last week, the method practices, generosity, moral discipline, all of this is part of our training. And in a way, that generosity, of course, we can say that the purpose of the training is for the sake of generosity, for the sake of giving happiness and freedom to all sentient beings on a most profound level. But because we're not able to do that without becoming enlightened, the further you go along the Bodhisattva path, the more interested you become, the more motivated you become to practice this union of shamatha and vipassana, the concentration and wisdom combined, because that is the actual cause of enlightenment. It's the actual method to become enlightened is to meditate on emptiness. So beyond, if we look in terms of these 5 paths, so the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, these are the 5 Mahayana paths. Actually, the 5 Hinayana paths have the same name, but they're slightly different. So on the path of accumulation, the first one, you're still doing a lot of the method practices. But even at the higher levels of that first path, you're more and more concentrating on the the wisdom practice. By the time you get to the path of preparation, that is the main thing that you're doing is you're meditating on emptiness. So to enter the path of accumulation, the first one, you have to develop the realization of shamatha. Because without the definition of that first path in the Mahayana path is the spontaneous bodhicitta. And that can only be developed on the basis of shamatha. If you don't have single-pointed concentration, your mind's going to wander off and you're going to start thinking about something that isn't consistent with bodhicitta. You get distracted and your bodhicitta's out the window temporarily. So unless you have single-pointed concentration, you cannot develop spontaneous bodhicitta. Through meditating on emptiness on the path of accumulation, the first Mahayana path, you have the realization of vipassana, and then the two together, the shamatha and vipassana, becomes the cause for the direct perception of emptiness, which is when you enter the third path, the path of seeing. Okay. So what happens is you already have the shamatha. You've already done the study, so you have an intellectual understanding of emptiness. So you're able to do analytical meditation on emptiness, looking at analyzing the five aggregates, the body, feelings, perceptions, karmic formations, and consciousness. Okay, you're analyzing those, understanding them to be empty of inherent existence. Your analytical meditation. But you don't have them both at the same time. While you're doing the analysis, you don't have a single-pointed concentration because you're going through a mental process of different thoughts. So your concentration isn't absolutely pure. But there comes a point, so even though, like you might, whatever your meditation object, it might be image of the Buddha or your breathing, whatever, you can concentrate on that perfectly. But your ability to concentrate single-pointedly is disturbed by doing an analytical meditation. But as you continue to meditate, there comes a point where you can maintain that stillness, that pure concentration, and at the same time you're doing the analytical meditation. It's described as like a tiny fish swimming through a very still pond. It doesn't disturb the water because it's just, So your very, very fine analysis is happening at the same time as single-pointed concentration. That's an extremely powerful form of meditation. Through that, over time, eventually that analysis becomes so refined that the conceptual thought, which is like, it's technically a generic image. So when you're doing analytical meditation on emptiness, the object that is directly perceived by your mind is a mental image of emptiness, a concept. Okay. At a certain point, that becomes so subtle and so refined that it sort of disappears, like a thin veil that starts kind of breaks, and you see the emptiness itself directly without a concept, without a mental image. You just see directly the actual reality of the nature of, usually probably meditating on the emptiness of your mind actually at that point. You could be meditating on the emptiness of the I, but often the object of analysis is the mind. And so at that point, then, when you perceive the emptiness directly, you don't perceive anything else at all. Your mind, the only thing that you are aware of in that state of deep concentration is the mere absence of inherent existence of the I or the mind or whatever it is that you're meditating on. Usually one of those two. Nothing else appears to your mind at all apart from the absence of inherent existence. Quite sort of strange idea, isn't it? You're not aware of anything except the non-inherent existence of the self or the mind. That's the state. Now when that happens, that is an irreversible realization. With the shamatha, it kind of, in a way, the way it's described, the experience sounds very similar. Like you just kind of, in this very pure state of awareness and completely absorbed in concentration. But you can lose that completely. Possible to, for that to just go, because you then come out of meditation and you engage, you've still got ego grasping. So you might think, I'm becoming fully enlightened, I can do anything, and then you go out and do something very negative and your concentration's gone. That's perfectly possible, right? But with this realization, the direct perception of emptiness, so the meditative absorption on the emptiness of the I, it is no longer possible to fall back. You can never lose that realization. So from that point, only one thing can happen, which is that, your awareness of emptiness, your realization of emptiness becomes deeper and deeper until there is no trace anymore of the ego grasping. There's no trace even eventually of the seeds of ego grasping. The appearance of inherent existence eventually disappears, and at that point you have become fully enlightened. So it's a watershed. You get once you attain that, it's the path of seeing. It's called, this is the third path, the direct perception of emptiness. You still have, so when you come out of meditation, the kleshas, the delusions, have not been completely destroyed. They still arise in a very subtle form, apparently. So you still experience anger, but it's not like what we experience. It's almost like a very faint echo of what we experience as anger. You say, oh, that's anger. It doesn't bother you. Nothing really bothers you. But you're not completely free from delusion, so you don't have all of the powers of a Buddha. You do have very, 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 very amazing powers, actually, at that point. It's said that when you reach this path of seeing, you become able to emanate 100 bodies at once. So that's just an example. All of the realizations that you have, it's like, oh, pretty amazing. So, I lost my thread there for a moment. So what I'm trying to convey is, that it's like this ladder. It's all very, very clearly laid out in the stages of the path teaching. It's like, this is the step that I need to take now because I've taken this step. Now the next one is that one, and the next one is that one. So even though the things I'm talking about may sound very amazing, but we can see how step by step from where we are, we could get to there. If we really were determined and we kind of, so this motivation, like the meditating on bodhicitta, increasing our motivation and hearing about these, if we view it in the right way, hearing about, I always find these teachings on them, it's called grounds and paths, salam in Tibetan, grounds and paths. There's very, very detailed teachings on all of the different levels and stages by which we get to enlightenment. So when we see this set out like this great long ladder, I find it very inspiring that, well, yeah, that sounds incredible and amazing and outrageous, But yeah, if I go this one, eventually I'll get to there. It's not out of our grasp, really. So I was describing this. So at that level, when when the bodhisattva is in meditation, they don't perceive anything except emptiness. When they come out of meditation, things appear to be inherently existent, but they're not fooled by it, as we are. We are fooled by it. Even though we might know intellectually, oh, nothing exists inherently, but still when something comes along, presses our button, we go, we react. They don't react. But they do have this, this, like I say, the faint echo of the delusion. Something happens and, there's craving. Oh, that's interesting. There's aversion or okay, that's but it doesn't disturb their mind. But slowly, they're through working through the different levels. So there's said to be 9 levels of the delusions that happen. So when you attain the path of seeing, I got this right. There are the innate delusions and the intellectually acquired delusions. Okay, so through kind of hearing wrong teachings, we acquire a mistaken philosophical view, and those actually, through conditioning, they become quite a sort of deeply ingrained in our mind, but not as deep as the innate ones, which we've had from lifetime to lifetime. So when we reach the path of seeing, those intellectually acquired delusions are destroyed, and on that path while we're on the path of seeing, all of the intellectually acquired delusions are destroyed. They disappear. And then the next level, the innate delusions start to be eliminated. So we start with the what are called the great delusions. That's how they disappear So on the path of meditation, the next path, there are 10. Well, no, there's 9. That's right, because there are 10 bodhisattva levels. The first one is the path of seeing is the first one. All the intellectually acquired delusions are eliminated there. Then the next, then after that, you're on the path of meditation, and on the second bodhisattva level, then the great innate delusions are destroyed, and then the middling great, and then the small great, and then the great middling, small middling. And then I think, so where are we now? The 8th level. Those are all of the what are called the what are they called? There are 2 types of what are obscurations that block us from enlightenment. So there are the delusions themselves, and then the seeds of the delusions, right? So it's described like the garlic in the jar, and when you take the garlic out of the jar, there's still the smell of the garlic is still left in there. The trace that is left behind through beginningless lifetimes of having viewed things as inherently existent, and therefore all of the delusions arising from that. Because of that, there's an innate tendency left in the mind that it sees things appear inherently existent. So even though at this level, when the Bodhisattvas eliminated these, we've got 7 levels of obscurations have gone. At that point, we're now on the 8th Bodhisattva level is called the pure. The 8th, 9th, 10th are called the pure Bodhisattva grounds, because then at that point, suffering and the causes of suffering have been completely eliminated. But there was still the traces of the delusions. So although the Bodhisattva doesn't experience any delusions, it doesn't experience any suffering, but phenomena still appear. They have the appearance of inherent existence. Because of that, he or she can't cognize them all at the same time. So those remaining 3 levels, the great, small, middling, small, and small obscurations, those are the obscurations to omniscience. So at that high level, the 8th, 9th, and 10th Bodhisattva grounds is going through those very, 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 very subtle traces of the previous delusions. And no more delusions in the mind, but there was still this appearance of inherent existence. And when all of those have gone, so all the time, so when the Bodhisattva is still meditating on emptiness, and when they're meditating on emptiness, they only perceive emptiness. When they come out of meditation, they can't perceive the emptiness directly. They perceive the phenomena, they know that they're empty of inherent existence, but they cannot directly see that emptiness. Because there's still the traces, like the echoes of delusion, if you like, in the mind. The mind's still got this tendency to see things, they appear as inherently exist. Finally, when they go from the 10th Bodhisattva ground, the last realization, they're on the path of meditation all this time, going through these 9 levels, and then to the last, the 5th path, the path of no more learning. At that point, all the veils of the mind, if you like, have been eliminated. And that being, it's not a Bodhisattva anymore, it's now a Buddha. At that realization, they perceive the emptiness, or the ultimate truth, and the conventional truth at the same time. And because of that, they perceive the ultimate truth and the conventional truth of all phenomena at the same time. Right? Because the ultimate truth is not different. I don't want to go in. How much time have we got? So when they reach that level of Buddhahood, there's no distinction between the meditative concentration and being out of meditation, between the meditation period and the post-meditation period, what it's called. All the time, every moment that now, not Bodhisattva, but Buddha, the Buddha perceives, that fully enlightened being perceives the emptiness and the conventional nature of all phenomena simultaneously, all phenomena past, present and future, conventional and ultimate, at the same time. So how's that relevant to our lives? That's the ultimate destination, that's the final destination of our path. And so, I find it very helpful to think of it in these stages. Well, now what I need to work on is making my aspiration stronger. And then, that will motivate me to do these kind of preliminary practices, which will then eventually I'll be able to develop single pointed concentration, or I'll be able to develop the intellectual realization. That's a kind of realistic goal, actually, for this lifetime. Might want to do, I'm going to do one of those things. Some people like to do the study, the philosophical study. Some people prefer the meditation. Maybe I'm going to manage to get to one of those things within this lifetime. Actually, we can do more than that. It's more than that's available. But if we focus on something that, if I focus on something that's realistic for me, from where I am now to get to here, then when I get to there, the next bit becomes realistic. So the whole thing doesn't become just like this beautiful fantasy. It becomes a real, like my life starts to change, go into a different direction. And I'm on this journey, and this journey will take me all the way to that incredible transcendental state that at the moment is kind of beyond my grasp, really. So if I kind of focus on somewhere that, is realistic for me now, then when I get there, I focus a little bit further along the path. So my intention in talking about all this is to kind of try and enable us to feel more connected with that as a reality, that is something, it's not just a because it is a kind of it's a beautiful story, isn't it? And a nice theory and a nice kind of, but to make it real for us, I think it's really helpful to understand how this sort of, how the journey works and where we need to get to, all the stages along the route. Like if you were going to Mount Everest, you're going to climb Mount Everest, you'd have to, okay, well, what do I need to? I need to get to Gatwick and then fly to Delhi, and then I need to go to Kathmandu, and then I need, you would plan the whole thing, wouldn't you? And where you're going to stay, and what it's going to, you imagine what it's going to be like. Oh, well, I'll need this when I get here, I'll need these. So this is kind of like, it's like that. Understanding the journey really helps us, I think, to relate to for me to know what I need to do next, and that's all I need to know. I don't need to worry about, well, gosh, what if I, direct realization of emptiness? Goodness me, it's there. It's somewhere along that path in the future for me, but at the moment, this is where I need to focus. Okay. So like the first four, I think the method ones are probably this is where we need to put our most effort at the moment. But still, we should be doing some meditation on emptiness. We should be doing some shamatha meditation at whatever level is kind of reasonable for me at the moment. So I do 20 minutes a day shamatha meditation. And I'm not saying it's anything very marvelous, but after quite a number of years, that's like what feels balanced for me. And I do other things as well. So, okay. I think I've said my piece. Anything, do we want to have a bit of discussion on that? Any questions? Or thoughts, or anything that didn't make sense?
I think the hardest thing with all this is knowing where you're going, doesn't it? Which way you're at and where
Right.
to
Yeah.
progress forward from there, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because there's just so much.
exactly,
And the way
that's
you've
true.
explained it, it sounds quite simple. And very good. But
Well,
then
that's
you've
good.
got all
Yeah.
the intellectual stuff and
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's very true. And I think one of the things that's wonderful about this Tibetan tradition, is that there's these kind of thick volumes with thousands of pages of philosophical writing, but there's also a very beautiful, short, simple text like this. It's quite short and simple, isn't it? And beautifully clear and beautifully written. So, whatever you're comfortable with, these are perfect teachings, So if that makes sense and it feels, simple and good, like that's what, the level that you're comfortable working at the moment, great. And probably further down the line, you'll want to go to a bit more detail, and pick up one of the slightly heavier volumes.
it's all very good stuff, but it's the way it's written, isn't it? It's that east versus west, and it hasn't quite got there yet, has it? So.
Yeah, well, that's true. But then now there's so much material there, and I think the thing is not to be overwhelmed by thinking you kind of, I can't even imagine digesting 1% of this. Well, no, of course not. But if you find one book that really speaks to you, read it several times until you feel like, okay, well, now I'm ready to. Don't overload yourself, certainly with intellectual stuff, or with the sort of tantric stuff, it's not intellectual, but you can easily get kind of overwhelmed by that as well, can't you? So if you have one simple practice, that you do every day, like your daily sadhana practice, whatever it is, and you're comfortable with that, then don't feel you have to do something else. Don't. Do that every day, and slowly it will become more meaningful. Because initially it becomes, first of all, it's like, well, you have to read through it every time. And then after a while, without having to make any great effort, just by reading through it every day, then you know it. And if you've been doing it every day for 6 months, and it's not too long and complicated, you probably then know it by heart. And then that makes it easier to actually do the meditation because you're not having to concentrate on reading it. And as you do that over and over again, little bits begin to fall into place, and that meditation starts to become more powerful for you, and easier to do. So it really is, a lot of it is just the thing that's so hard for us Westerners, to have the patience to do the same thing over and over and over again. And as we get more familiar with it, it begins to work its way deeper into our mind, and it begins to change our experience, and we begin to have a taste of the realization, even just a taste, but they can be so inspiring. So I think it's very much about finding our own pace and our own level, and then sticking with it. That's the hardest part, is sticking with it and not getting, sort of deflected off the path. And life does deflect us off our path. Things happen, and oh gosh, my life's been so complicated for the last 3 months. I've hardly done any practice at all. It's all gone out the window. Well, okay, pick yourself up and start again. That's how it is. And and that's fine. That's just normal. That's just life. But I think when my first teacher, John Marshall, who was a wonderful teacher, it's always very, very, very straightforward, down to earth, simple teachings that he gave. But he was a real practitioner. And one of the things that impressed me that he said about it was, well, you might go away from this path. You might kind of wander off and, forget about it for a while, but you'll always come back. Because once you've kind of heard the message, because it's true, because it is, it is valid, it is a pure, authentic spiritual teaching, it's planted its seed in your mind, and that will never go away. It will come back. This life, next life, eventually that seed will ripen and become a Buddha. We all will become Buddhas. There's no other possibility. Eventually. It's just, there are certain shortcuts and certain roundabout routes that we can take. It's up to us. But, Okay. Any more questions or thoughts? We're nearly at the end. We can't meet here on Monday, and I haven't been able to find another suitable venue so far. But I think actually, when I suggested having an extra class, I was thinking that this was going to be the last one on the program, but there is one next week. So I think I'm okay with that actually. There's only really one more topic, which is about the Vajrayana, and although that's a huge topic, but because most of the Lamrim text, it is very, very, very short. They don't actually give you a presentation of the whole tantric path. It's just like that's the next stop on the on the railway line, So we'll talk a little bit about that. I suppose, although technically, the Tantra is included in Lamrim, in reality, it's like, well, it's just pointing you on towards that. So based on all of this that we've been going through for the past few months, all of these topics and the preliminaries and the bodhicitta, 2 methods for developing bodhicitta and the 6 perfections. Oh, there's one more topic, isn't there, which is the 4 methods of benefiting trainees. I've forgotten about that. But in terms of the Tantra, it's really just saying, okay, it's just a signpost saying, right, that's the next thing is Tantra. So we'll talk about that. But I will be talking about Tantra on Saturday, as some of you know. We're having a session on Saturday morning for people who have received a tantric initiation. So we're talking about Highest Yoga Tantra. So That is a special thing. But next week, I'll talk a little bit about Tantra from the point of view of Lamrim. And then it'll be Christmas. Christmas party the next day, isn't it? Friday. Yeah, Thursday. Next Thursday is the last class of this, and then the Friday is the Christmas party. So we have this very short section called the 4 Ways of Benefiting Trainees. So I'll just read it out and just say a few words about it. Taking as motivation the thought that one must attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, number 1, one makes offerings in order to assemble an entourage of trainees. An entourage, that's good. Then 2, in order to please them, one shows them a smiling face and speaks to them gently. Thirdly, one shows them the Dharma, the 6 perfections and so forth, and teaches them how actually to practice it. Finally, number 4, one lives and practices in accordance with the teachings one has given. You should in every possible way develop these 4 profound methods of benefiting others. So I think kind of the reason why this is sort of put in as a separate section is because technically so the bodhicitta has 2 purposes. It has a purpose for yourself and it has a purpose for others. So the purpose for yourself is that you attain enlightenment, you complete all of the qualities, you become completely free from suffering, you experience all of these things. This is your own purpose. And then it also fulfills the purposes of others, freeing them from suffering. So technically the 6 perfections are, although many of them involve benefiting others, but the 6 perfections are the method to fulfill your own purpose, becoming enlightened, right? They are the method to attain enlightenment. And the 4 ways of benefiting trainees are directly, they are directed towards the purposes of others. Okay, so the Bodhisattva on training on the path, as well as doing the practices of the 6 perfections in order to become enlightened himself or herself, also at the same time is practicing these 4 ways of benefiting trainees, so that's fulfilling others' purpose. Okay? So, although there's lots of ways in which you can benefit others, here, it's entirely focused on giving Dharma teachings. That is the main way that the Bodhisattva, and indeed the Buddha, actually benefits others, is by teaching. There's no more profound way that you can help anybody than by teaching them the Dharma. Because only by teaching them the Dharma can you enable them to become completely free from suffering and to experience perfect happiness. Okay, you can help them in many other ways, materially, or they're like the four types of giving. Yeah, giving love, giving fearlessness, giving material things, but giving the Dharma is the most profound way of benefiting others. So all of these, you making offerings. It's interesting. Giving material things is also referred to as the 4 ways of gathering trainees. Actually, so these activities are the ones that you do in order to attract and interest people in hearing your teachings, receiving Dharma teachings from you. And one of them is giving them material things. So you can see that in some cases that might be kind of relevant and important. It seems unusual that you kind of give people things in order so that they will then want to come and hear you teach Dharma, but that's right. That's what it's there for. And then, so in order to please them, one shows a smiling face, speaks to them gently, being kind, and being kind of fun to be around. They don't want to come and hear your teachings if you just kind of have this sort of miserable face and tell them all about death, and the hell realms. There are some teachers who are like that. But you look at Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa. Everybody wants to be around them. It's just they're so wonderful to be around. Okay, and then teaching them the Dharma, actually teaching them in a way that they feel good about. And then very importantly, you've got to also be the example, live and practice in accordance with the teachings that you've given. So these are the ways in which you kind of motivate others to come and hear the Dharma, and you teach the Dharma in a way that actually directly benefits them. Okay. That's also the other, so technically there are like these two parts to the Bodhisattva's practice, the 6 perfections which are for one's own purpose, and then the 4 ways of gathering trainees or benefiting trainees which are for the purpose of others. Okay. So that's everything except the Tantra now. Any questions about those? So it is suitable, to at whatever sort of, on whatever scale, whatever level is appropriate for one's own level of development. I think, people are often very reticent about, I'm not ready to teach, I want to teach, that's not, kind of being super humble, I'm not a teacher, how can I teach? Well, we all can, at one level or another. There's somebody who knows a bit less that we can benefit by explaining things that, they ask questions rather than say, I don't know anything, how can I tell you? Often it is the case that you're in a position to help somebody in that way, or a few people, or, and if you have that opportunity, you should be kind of truthful with yourself, I think, about not just resolutely denying that you have any ability or any knowledge. Of course you do, and so sometimes, it is appropriate and suitable, and if you can benefit, then you should. It isn't good to kind of, I think, be too ready to jump into teaching everything that you know to everybody around you. That isn't a particularly good sign of spiritual maturity. But if you can see that it could be beneficial, don't kind of hide your light under a bushel completely. It's a balance between being too eager and not eager enough. Okay. So shall we do a little bit of meditation to finish? And then some dedication prayers. We'll take a few moments to allow the busy mind to slow down, allow the body to settle and relax. And let's reflect on our motivation, our interest in this Mahayana Buddhist spiritual path. Out of all the different spiritual practices or other activities that we could have chosen, there are many. For some reason or reasons, we found this one to be particularly meaningful. That's why we're here. Just take a few moments to think about your own journey. How was it that you came to this path, to find an interest in the Mahayana Buddhist path? What perhaps was behind your seeking a spiritual path in the first place? What led you to that? Can you remember? And when you found this one, what was it that caused you to think, perhaps this is the right path for me? And was it in some way something to do with this aspect of being concerned both with one's own well-being and inner peace and freedom from suffering, and with the aspect of benefiting others? As Lama Atisha said, I travel the spiritual path from joy to joy. This practice of the Bodhisattva, training the mind to be more and more focused on helping, benefiting others, whether directly through giving, love, charity, fearlessness, giving the Dharma teachings themselves, or indirectly through developing our own mind, our own spiritual qualities, training our mind in moral discipline, concentration, equanimity, compassion, love, wisdom, and thereby being more able to benefit others. That through training in being more and more dedicated in our lives to benefiting others, what happens in fact is that we are benefited. We become more joyful, more contented, more at peace with ourselves. More and more deeply grounded in knowing that our life is meaningful. Through this devotion to the welfare of others. And so out of this compassionate, loving motivation towards others, as our understanding deepens, then our aspiration, our strong motivation to develop the realizations of wisdom, the insight into the true nature of reality, that in fact is the only thing that has the power to completely free us from suffering and the causes of suffering. So this motivation becomes stronger the more our compassion and loving kindness increases. So even though right now these deep realizations of emptiness, single-pointed concentration may seem rather out of reach, but what we can do is to cultivate a pure aspiration, a wish, a prayer, an intention to work towards those realizations, recognizing that they are not impossible. I myself, if I set my mind to it over a period of years, will be able to develop increasing concentration, understanding of emptiness, become more skilled in meditation, bring together the concentration and wisdom, and as I do so, as the delusions that are all dependent on the ego grasping the false view of the self, they slowly become weaker. As my wisdom develops, I become more able to help and guide others. As the ego grasping becomes weaker, my own realizations of love and compassion will grow. Till finally I actually enter the Bodhisattva path, slowly progress through the spiritual levels towards Buddhahood. All of this, if we remember back to the very first topic, is dependent on our relationship with the Guru, the example, the spiritual teacher who himself or herself has already travelled this path to the end. So with that inspiring example before us, one way to think about the Guru is that he or she is the living example of my own future state, the potential that I already have within me in Buddha nature. So we should not think the Guru is fundamentally different or separate from myself. The Guru represents my own true potential. That through, step by step, following this path, I too will attain that stage of realization whereby I can truly help others at a deep level. So please, in whatever way is meaningful to you, try to connect with that sense of aspiration, the purpose of the spiritual path. And let's make that prayer, dedication prayer, sincerely from our hearts. Read the prayer on page 22. Jan Chum Sam Chuk Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyoji Ke Wanyam Pa Me Payan Gong Ne Gong Du Belwa Shong. Ke Wadi Nyo Du Da Lama Sangye Dro Gyurne Rowa Chikang Malupa Deyi Salaga. Long life prayers. Tub tu chang jing jam gun gel wei ten zin ke pel wei kun ze dog por ze chok sum kur wei leg mun tu dru pa dang sok du je gun du shab ten chok gang ri ra wei kor wei jing kam dir Pandang Dewa Ma Liu Zhong Wei Ne Zhen Rei Zi Wang Tenzin Gatso Yi Jape Si Te Bardu Teng Yu Chi. Thank you very much.